Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
We hear MLK's name everywhere, but after doing this deep dive, well, let's just say I had a lot to learn. This time we're going beyond the I have a dream sound bites and really getting into the nitty-gritty of his role in the civil rights movement.
Exactly. You're going to be surprised by some of this for sure. We're looking at sources that paint him as like a strategic genius, a figurehead, maybe even somewhere in between. See what's closest to the truth.
Okay, yeah, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So let's rewind back to the 50s, Montgomery Bus Boycott. This is where MLK, like a young MLK, steps onto the scene. And I always thought he was like the leader of that boycott.
He definitely became the face of it, no doubt. I mean, his speeches, powerful. And his commitment to nonviolence got everyone's attention. But you might be surprised to hear the boycott was actually the idea of Joanne Robinson and the Women's Political Council.
Yeah.
Like, they were the ones with the plan.
Seriously, I had no clue. It really shows how we get fixated on one leader when there's this whole, like, network of people making things happen.
Exactly. Like those hidden figures. Right. And this keeps happening through the whole movement. Think about the sit-ins, the freedom rides. King was there, of course, supported it all. But, a lot of this was started by groups like SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
So he led, but he was also part of this bigger thing. Seems like he knew how to adapt,
Yeah. Lead from the front, get people going, especially with those speeches. But he could also step back, support others, recognize that the movement had all these different parts, changing all the time.
It makes you think about how we judge, the impact of movements with all these different leaders and strategies. It's complicated.
You got it. And that complexity is, like, essential to getting King his legacy. Think about the March on Washington, 63, that I have a dream speech, iconic.
Yeah.
Right? But most people don't know the march itself, not King's idea at all.
Seriously, I always thought that was his march.
It was the vision of this veteran activist, A. Philip Randolph. See? We focus on individuals, even when it's a team effort.
Wow. Mind blown. Okay, so strategy time. Birmingham 63, Selma 65. Huge moments for the movement. King's organization skills. Sometimes people question them. But these campaigns worked, so what was the secret?
Okay, this is where things get interesting. He did something kind of controversial, but super effective, manipulating white violence. He knew if peaceful protests met with, like, police brutality, it would shock everyone and force change.
So he was, like, provoking a reaction on purpose to get people's attention. That's, I don't know, makes me think, like, where's the line between strategy and, well, doing the right thing?
Yeah, it's tricky ethically. But those awful images from Birmingham, the fight for voting rights in Selma, that got us the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65, big wins.
I mean, those acts changed everything, right? Outlawed discrimination, made sure everyone could vote no matter their race. Huge.
Absolutely monumental.
Yeah.
But we got to remember, it wasn't just him. There were so many organizations, individuals fighting like crazy for this.
Yeah, we mentioned a few, but there were so many more. It wasn't just King, right?
Right. You had the NAACP in the courts, CORE doing direct action, SNCC getting young people involved. And think about all the local groups, the people in the community, the unsung heroes. They all mattered.
Makes you think about, where we live now. Who's quietly working, making things better, the people we don't always see.
Exactly. And I think that's a great place to pause for now and pick up in our next part. So we were talking about those big wins, the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65, really changed the game, right? Like, no more legal segregation.
Yeah, it feels like a different world almost. But did these laws, did they really solve everything for Black Americans back then?
Good question. Gets to the heart of things. These acts were huge, yeah, but they couldn't fix everything. Outlawed discrimination, sure.
Yeah.
But the economic stuff, the social gaps, that was harder. And honestly, we're still dealing with some of that today.
So Jim Crow was out, but true equality, not so fast.
Exactly. Economic justice, fair housing, those fights kept going. And remember King's Chicago campaign? It showed how up north things were, like, trickier. Segregation wasn't so obvious, but it was baked into everything.
Makes you realize change takes time, right? It's not just laws. It's about changing how people think, fixing systems that have been messed up for, like, generations.
Couldn't have said it better. And that's key to understanding King, his later years, his focus. It shifted.
Yeah, towards the end, it wasn't just racial equality anymore, right? He was talking about poverty, Vietnam, these, like, bigger issues.
Yeah, the triple evils, he called them. Racism, poverty, militarism. He saw them all connected. Real justice meant changing society from the bottom up.
That's a pretty radical idea. I bet some people weren't happy about it.
Oh yeah, he got pushback, especially about Vietnam. But for him, it all fit together. Racial justice, economic justice, peace, it was all part of the same fight. Oppression was all about a lack of love and compassion. So to really be free, people had to change inside.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. Suddenly it feels like super relevant to everything going on today.
Yeah, that's King's legacy, right?
Yeah.
His words, his actions still make people want to fight for what's right, no matter what the issue is.
His assassination, though, that was such a loss. But his message, it's still out there. It's like a reminder that fighting for justice, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right?
Well said. And let's not forget, he was incredible, but he was part of something bigger. The whole civil rights movement was a team effort. So many people fighting for change.
Right. We've talked about some of them, but there were so many more. It wasn't all about King, even though he was important.
Exactly. Think about the NAACP, those lawyers changing the laws, CORE with their direct action, SNCC getting young people involved, and then all the local groups, the organizers, the people you don't always hear about. They all mattered.
It makes you think about leadership, right? It's not always about one person with a big personality. It's about recognizing everyone's contribution, the power of people working together.
That's a deep thought, and it's something we can all learn from as we try to make things better in our own communities.
Totally. It's not about waiting for a hero. It's about realizing we all have the power to make a difference.
Exactly. And this brings us back to something important about this deep dive into MLK. It's not just about facts and dates. It's about finding inspiration, learning from what happened.
I love that. It's like we're carrying the torch, building on what they started.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most powerful tools for change. Education. King was all about it. He saw it as the key to unlocking human potential, giving people the power to create a more just and equal society.
I've always been fascinated by how much he talked about education. He saw it as more than just knowing stuff. It was about transforming yourself and the world around you.
Precisely. And I think that's key to understanding his legacy,
Yeah.
For King, education wasn't just memorizing facts. It was about learning how to think critically, how to understand others, how to challenge the way things are and make them better.
It makes you wonder about how we're using education in our own lives, right? Are we just learning facts, or are we using it to actually change ourselves and make the world better?
Powerful question, and I think we should all ask it ourselves. King believed education could set our minds and spirits free, and I think he was right.
So how does this idea of education connect to the fight for racial and economic justice? What can we do?
Great question. And it needs a multi-pronged approach. Personally, we can commit to lifelong learning, always trying to see things from different angles, checking our own biases,
So being open to new ideas, new ways of thinking, and constantly questioning what we think we know.
Exactly. And as a society, we need to fight for everyone to have access to good education no matter what. Support teachers, schools, create learning environments that encourage critical thinking, empathy, and a commitment to justice.
This sounds a lot like what King called the beloved community, that vision of a just and equal society he talked about.
You got it. King believed education was key to making that happen. He saw a world where everyone was valued, differences were celebrated, and everyone had the chance to reach their full potential.
That's such a beautiful idea, and it feels so relevant to the world today, Everything feels so divided.
You're right. That's why King's message of love, compassion, and understanding is so important now. We need to find ways to connect, to build bridges, to work together to create a fairer world.
I'm with you, but how do we actually do that? It feels kind of overwhelming sometimes.
The problems are big, that's for sure, and they've been around for a long time. But King's life, it shows us that change is possible. Even when things seem impossible, we can overcome injustice and create a better world.
So how do we turn that hope into action? What did King teach us about making change happen?
One of the biggest lessons is the power of nonviolent resistance. He believed violence just leads to more violence, and real change only comes through peaceful means.
But nonviolence, it's not just about not hitting people, right? It's about a deeper commitment to love and understanding.
You're absolutely right. For King, nonviolence was a way of life, not just a tactic. It meant seeing the good in everyone, even your enemies. It meant refusing to treat them like they're less than human.
That's hard, especially these days. It feels like we're surrounded by messages telling us to be afraid and hate people who are different from us.
Yeah, it's true. Our culture often celebrates violence. But King's message reminds us there's another way, a better way, built on love, compassion, and believing in the good in people.
It's powerful, and we need to remember that, especially now when things feel so uncertain.
Agreed. King's legacy gives us hope. He showed us change is possible, that even when the odds are stacked against you, you can beat injustice and build a better world. It really is. Makes you think, if he had lived longer, how would he have tackled things differently? We're talking about learning from history, but history itself, it's always changing, right? There's always something new to learn, old ideas to rethink.
It's true, and I think for all of us, it's about staying curious, asking questions, being open to new ways of seeing things.
You got it. It's not just about taking in information, it's about really thinking about it, challenging what you believe, maybe even changing your mind.
Totally. And that brings us back to something we've been talking about, this idea that change doesn't happen alone. It takes everyone working together, being willing to listen, learn, and push for the same goal.
Exactly. And it's not just about working together, it's about seeing how everything's connected. King saw fighting for racial justice as part of a bigger fight, for human rights, for everyone's dignity. He believed that all kinds of oppression, they were all linked, and to truly be free, you had to tackle it all.
So it's not enough to just get rid of racist laws or whatever. You have to change the whole system, the stuff that creates inequality and injustice, all of it.
You got it. That's a crucial point. We can't just focus on one thing. We have to see how racism, poverty, the environment, war, all these things, they're all connected. They feed off each other.
It's like you have to see the whole picture, not just a little piece of it.
Exactly. That's why it's important to team up, to work across different movements, to realize that our struggles, they're all part of the same fight. Racial justice, economic justice, environmental justice, it's all connected.
And this is where I start to feel overwhelmed, It's like there's so much to do. Where do you even start?
Yeah, I get it. It can feel paralyzing when you see how big the problems are. But we don't have to do everything, and we don't have to be perfect. The important thing is to start somewhere, do something, even if it seems small, and believe that together we can make a difference.
So don't wait for the perfect time or the perfect opportunity. Just show up, do what you can, and trust that it matters.
Right, and find joy in the struggle. Find purpose. King talked about that a lot. Love and hope, even when things are tough. He believed joy gave you strength, and hope kept the movement going.
That's so important to remember. It's easy to get caught up in all the bad stuff, but there's beauty in fighting for what's right.
Absolutely, and that's what we should hold on to. The fight for justice, it's a marathon. We run it together. We help each other, celebrate the wins, and keep going because we believe in a better world.
And that's a perfect place to wrap things up, I think. This deep dive has been amazing. I've learned so much about MLK, about the civil rights movement, but more than that, I'm inspired and I want to do more, to keep fighting for justice and equality.
It's been great talking about all this with you. I hope everyone listening feels the same way, inspired to learn more, get involved, and make a difference where they are. King's dream, it's not just a dream, it's a call to action.
Totally. So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and work of Martin Luther King Jr. We hope you learned something, that you're fired up and ready to make a difference. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep fighting for a better world. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.